Okay, good morning or good afternoon, and welcome to lesson 7 of module 2. We're starting topic B today, where we are doing multiple movements on a coordinate grid with our transformations. Today we're going to be practicing just with translations, and we'll know some properties of those by the end. So your objective today is that by the end of the lesson, you'll be able to complete a sequence of translations. You'll know you're successful when you can correctly complete a sequence of translations and then explain the properties of a sequence of those translations. Okay. Let's go ahead and get started with some background knowledge and then move into an exploratory challenge and then some examples and exercises as well. Please remember your class expectations. Keep your video on and your mic muted. Make sure you're showing your thinking and your work on your notes. And you are remaining respectful, responsible, and safe throughout the class period. Let's continue. All right, to build some background, we're just going to talk about this image that you have here. You don't really have to do much work, just kind of listen and take notes as I do. So you'll see that we have a lot of different points, and then we have two vectors. So your vectors are off on the left with the arrows. So we have vector BC. Remember, when we are naming a vector, we start at the bottom of the arrow and then move towards the top where the arrow is pointing towards. And then we have vector AB as well. And then on this image, we see some ellipses, and then we see a point. So remember, our original points don't have the prime symbol. So I'm going to highlight the original things here. So we have an original shape, which is this shape E, and an original point, which is this point P. And so you'll see that there's a P prime and then a P double prime. That is showing a sequence of movements. So the first movement is it goes from P to P prime right here. So that is showing that it's moving along vector AB, because that's how far it's moving and that's the direction it is moving in. Okay, and then with a sequence we have another movement as well. So it then moves along vector BC, moving up, and finally gets to this P double prime. Okay, the same thing happens with our ellipses off to the left or the right. We start with just the shape E, and it first moves along vector AB and becomes E prime, and it then moves along vector BC and becomes E double prime. So there's two movements overall because we had two vectors overall. And then the only extra thing that you need to know today is that if we're doing two movements, we have two separate names for those new shapes. So we have P prime, P double prime, E double prime. Okay? And this is essentially what we're going to be doing today, is moving shapes along multiple vectors, and that is called a translation sequence because we're doing more than one movement. And today we're just working with slides, so we're just doing translations. So that is your background information before we get into our actual practice. Let's go ahead and move to the next slide. All right, here's your exploratory challenge. So if we look at just the image that we have up here, you'll see a few things. We have an angle ABC. We have a line segment, ED, right here. And then we have two vectors. I know that these are vectors because there are arrows attached to them on the end. So we have vector FG, and then we have vector HI. Okay? Part A says translate angle ABC and segment ED along vector FG. So we're going to be using this vector. I'll highlight it in red real quick. They will be moving to the right. And then it says label the translated images appropriately. That is A prime, B prime, C prime, and E, D prime. So I'm just going to move these. I don't have a transparency, so I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. Moving from A to A prime, it's going to be probably about here. B to B prime, probably about here. And then C to C prime, probably about here. So this is my new translated angle. It's the first movement. This becomes A prime. This becomes B prime. And this becomes C prime. And then I'm going to do the same thing with that line segment ED. So I'm moving E to probably around here, and D to probably around here. I'll connect them to form my line segment, and then we have E prime, and D prime is what we denote them as. Okay, so we did that part. B then goes on to say translate those prime images, so angle A prime, B prime, C prime, and segment E prime, D prime along vector HI. So if we look at vector HI, I'll highlight it in blue right here. We're now just going to move down a little bit kind of down and to the right. And then it says to label those appropriately. So I'm going to be moving my A prime, probably going to be right here, and then B prime, probably about here, and then C prime, probably about here. I will connect those and then label my new angle. This is my second movement, so these are my second images. This is A double prime, B double prime, and C double prime. And then we're going to do the same thing with our line segment. So again, we're starting not with our ED, we're starting with E prime, D prime. And then we're moving this down, so it's probably going to be about E and D. Right about there. And this would be E double prime, D double prime. Okay? Now we're going to do some analyzation of these images in their primes. It says, how does the size of angle ABC compare to A double prime, B double prime, C double prime? So if we look at our original angle right here, highlighted in green, and then our second prime image, although this is not like to scale, you should be able to tell that they are the same size. Okay, so go ahead and write that down. And then it says, how does the length of segment ED compare to E prime, D prime? So this length, and I'm off a little bit, it's the same size as well. And then it says, why do you think what you observed in those last two questions are true? And the reason that they're true is because we're not manipulating the size of this shape at all. We're literally just sliding it around. So translations, preserve, size. They also preserve angle measurement. So you can add that in there too. Okay, that's the end of this exploratory challenge. We're now just going to get into some work. We'll use some coordinate grids as well to kind of be more accurate with our drawings and things. Let's go ahead and move on. All right, here you see in exercise 2, we have a coordinate grid, which makes it a lot easier to draw these things. It says, translate triangle ABC along vector FG, and then translate its image along vector JK. Be sure to label the images appropriately. So we always just want to start with one point. I'm going to start with my A, and we are beginning with a vector FG. So if I look at FG, I can see that to go from F to G, I'm going up 1, 2, 3, right 1, 2. So that's what I'm going to do with my point A. I'm going to go up 3, 1, 2, 3, right 2, 1, 2. And this is the new location of my point A, and it's an image, so this is my A prime. Okay? I'm going to do the same thing with my B and my C, up 3 over 2. And I want to make sure I label them as I go so I don't get confused. Okay? From there, I'm just going to connect my shapes, or connect my points. And I have my translated image. So I have my new triangle right there. Okay? It goes on to say, then translate that image along vector JK. So JK is right here. And JK is going to go from J to K. We go up 1 over 1, 2, 3. So from all my points right here, I'm going to go up 1, right 3. So up 1, right 3. This is going to be A double prime. Go to my B prime, go up 1, right 3. This is going to be my B prime. And then go to my C prime, go up 1 over 3. And this is my C double prime. Sorry, I forgot the double prime for my B. And then we're just going to connect these. And this is my double prime shape after my sequence, my second translation. Okay? Make sure you have this down before you move on to the next slide. All right, for exercise 3, it says translate figure ABCDEF along vector GH, and then translate its image along vector JI. Label each image appropriately. I want you to go ahead and pause this video and do this on your own, and then come back and press play once you have the images drawn and labeled appropriately, and check your work, okay? All right, you're now coming back to check your work. So we are translating along vector GH to begin with, which means we're just moving down 2. To go from G to H, we just move down 2. So I'm going to do that for each of these points and label them appropriately. There's my A prime, down 2, there's my B prime, down 2, there's my C prime, and so on and so forth. Can't really tell what that is. I think that's an F. I'm going to connect them with black because it makes it easier. So A, B, C, D, E, F, and then connect back to A. So there's my translated image, the image prime. And then we're going to translate that image along vector JI. So first I need to figure out what am I doing with vector JI. So to go from J to I go up 1, 2, right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So up 2, right 5. I'm going to start with my A prime, go up 2, right 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's A prime. Move to B, up 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to do this for all of them. C prime, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. D prime, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. E, and then F. I know this looks crazy with all these little movements or arrows, but oh, one thing I did incorrectly here is I only put prime. I didn't put double prime for all of them. So I'm going to change that real quick. These are all double primes because I'm translating for a second time in my sequence. And then you just need to connect your A to your B. It's kind of hard to see. B to C, D to D, D to E, F, and then back to A. So there's my double prime image. Okay, so go ahead and check your work with my work and then move forward once you have it all down correctly. All right, for exercise 4, you do not have a coordinate grid, so it's just going to be kind of freehand, but it's just kind of here to reiterate what we've learned so far. It says translate circle A and ellipse E along vector AB. So basically we're just shifting them up. The new shapes would be probably like right here and right here, kind of off the page a little bit. Scoot out a little bit. Okay, and then we'll label those A prime and E prime. And then it says translate circle A prime and ellipse E prime along vector CD. So it's now going to go up into an angle a bit. I'm going to zoom out even more. And it'll be kind of going up into the right. So A prime will be maybe over here. E prime will be maybe over here. And then we're going to label these as A double prime and E double prime. Again, it's not going to be perfect because we're just freehanding it. It says, does the size or shape of either figure change after performing the sequence? No. So the size and shape does not change because translations preserve size and shape. All right, make sure you know that property, and then once you have that down, move on to the next slide. All right, exercise 5 is our second to last exercise. It says the picture below shows a translation of circle A along vector CD. So basically they've already done it for us. So they took this circle right here, circle A, and they translated it along vector CD. Okay, and then it became this circle right here. I'll do it in blue, A prime. It says, name the vector that maps the image of the circle back to its original position. So what would the vector be called for us to go back from A prime to get us back to where A was? Well, it's pretty simple. if we have CD going down this way and we're trying to move back, we're just going to go the opposite way. And so the only thing that changes is the order of our letters. So instead of saying vector CD, we are now going to move along vector DC. Okay, because we're starting at D and we're moving back up to go to our original image. Okay, make sure you have that down, and then we'll move on to our last exercise in our closure before your exit ticket. All right, this last exercise is just kind of reiterating the point that we just made in our last one. It says if a figure is translated along vector QR, what translation takes it back to its original position? Well, if you're going from Q to R, to go backwards, you're just going to go from R to Q. So that would be the new vector. Okay? You have a question like that on your exit ticket, so make sure you understand that. And if you didn't, rewatch this part so you can understand it, okay? And then we're just going to summarize this lesson. So translating a figure along one vector and then translating its image along another vector is an example of a sequence of transformations, right? It's a sequence. It's more than one movement on a plane. A sequence of translations enjoys the same properties as a single translation. So basically, just like we know that happens when we move something one time, the same properties occur when we move something more than one time. So the links are preserved, the degrees are preserved, angles are preserved, all that stuff. And then lastly, if a figure undergoes two transformations and is in the same place it was originally, then it's been mapped onto itself. So that's just some verbiage that you need to know. When something gets mapped onto itself, it's just moved back to its original position. Okay? At this time, please complete your exit ticket in Galileo and your lesson reflection in Google Classroom. Work on any missing work that is listed on the missing work document for this week. Your Moby Max. Work on some of those minutes that are due on Friday, and extra credit Prodigy if you choose to do that.